Welcome to UnstuckAF, a podcast here to help you do you better. There's a path that starts where you are, passes through who you are, and leads where you want to go. We're here to hear from people who've walked that path or who are walking it right now. This is Orlando Bishop, Coach Orlando, and I thank you for listening as we learn how to get unstuck, how to be unstuck, how to live unstuck. Unstuck as fuck. Welcome to UnstuckAF, and I want you to know that today you're going to get to hear from one of the early champions of this system and the way we do things around here and what she has gone on to do, which we will touch on with what she built with the Alliance system is nothing short of amazing. And you saw that another one of your authors has a book on the way, so I was very pleased. Look at that. See, we'll get into all of that. Everyone, this is my friend Cherise Fisher. We have been friends since college, so great 10 years. And
That's right.
That's right. They can't prove it. They can't prove different. And I just, there's so many things you could come and speak on and the experiences you've had, and we'll touch on them. But we had some conversations around the topic of grief. And I wanted to take a special angle because of the conversation we had and ask, how and or when did you know that travel was going to be a part of your grieving process? So I'm going to give you a moment to think about that. We'll be right back to pick up where Cherise's answer.
Ready to light that fire by doing the things that make you come alive? Welcome to Health Raisers, a podcast for wise women. I'm your host, Dr. Nadine. I left a soul-crushing medical career full of bad news and evolved into a joyful health integration coach, helping hundreds of women find their healthy. You're more than your dress size. Stop putting up with toxic relationships, swallowing your true emotions, and sacrificing your mental health. Stop using your body as a battlefield. You're always giving. You deserve to put yourself first, not just for your sake, but for those you love. Wise women, let's make ourselves a priority right now. It's time to raise some health together. If you're ready to take the first step, visit npkhealthintegration.com and take the free questionnaire to assess where you are in your health journey right now. And if you're ready to take a bolder step into possibility with your health journey, email me at npk@npkhealthintegration.com to learn more about classes and coaching.
That is such a good question. When did I know or believe or think that it was going to be part of my process? I don't know if I consciously ever thought that. I think that the travel became this surprise relief, this surprise balm, and the way in which I traveled. So let me back up a little bit. And say that my college roommate, also been with her for 10 years, my college roommate and I had been, well, let's start here. When she was turning 40, we all turned 40 at the same time. And she did not know what to do for her 40th birthday. I said, we have to do something. It's 40. Like that was a really big deal.
Yeah, it's a big one.
We have to do something. So she said, well, I mean, she lived in Co-op City, which is in the Bronx, New York, and right near her was Orchard Beach. Sometimes some people call it the Dominican Riviera. I don't know. But it's like the local beach. Literally, she can ride her bicycle there. She's like, well, we can go there first thing in the morning and watch the sunrise.
Oh, okay.
So I was like, okay, let's do that. That felt like it was something to do to celebrate this birthday. So her mom and I went and I got balloons the first year and cupcakes.
Okay.
And we hustled out to the beach. This is June 6th, so the beach isn't officially open during the week. So it was completely empty. And we just sat on the beach and we vibed, right? So we would do this every year. And one year, the first year I bought balloons and cupcakes. The next year I bought balloons, cupcakes, and sushi. The fourth year we bought some fried chicken. Like, it just turned into this thing. It
kept going.
Most of the time it was just the three of us, Stephanie, her mom, and I. Sometimes it was a weekend. And so my kids came, and so that was how we celebrated the birthday. I think it was around 43 or 44, maybe 45, that I said to her, for our 50th, which at the time was like far in the distance.
Right. Way over there.
I was like, we need to upgrade the beach.
I love it.
No disrespect.
You're like, this is cool. Yeah, this is cool and all. Right. I got it. I got you.
No disrespect to Orchard Beach. Like, you don't go to the water in Orchard Beach. Like, you go
right.
You sit on the sand, you vibe, right? There's some Latin music playing in the background. You know what I mean? You vibe. You're not swimming, you're not actually going into the water. Anyway, so I think around 48, which is when I think it was during the pandemic. Either it was during the pandemic or just before the pandemic, she said, I think I know what beach we should go to when we turn 50. And I said, now, I'm thinking we going to Miami. I'm thinking maybe we're going to go to Jamaica. I'm thinking
islands, right.
For islands, right? Being an island girl myself. Who says Kenya? I said, Kenya, Africa? Yeah, because she's like, well, we've seen the Atlantic Ocean. We've seen the Pacific Ocean. You've obviously seen the Caribbean Ocean. We've never seen the Indian Ocean. And apparently, the most beautiful place to see the Indian Ocean is Tanzania and Kenya. So that's where Kenya came from. And I literally was just like, well, since I don't open my mouth and suggested this, upgrading the beach, I better just play along.
Right.
So that's what we figured out to do. And we looked at various trips, and as it turned out, we ended up going to Tanzania. And she was like, well, if we're going all the way to Tanzania, let's go on safari. I was like, oh, okay. I was just game.
We're doing it now. We're here now.
We're just doing it. We're here. We're doing it. Now, during this time, my father became more and more ill. He had a stroke, I think, in 2018. Which he recovered from pretty well. How interesting. It just occurred to me. He recovered from his stroke in 2018. And I resolved in my mind that we would all go to Montserrat, which is the island where we're from. So again, here's like travel part one, actually. I resolved in my mind that we would go to Montserrat. And he was like, I'm too ill, I'm too this, I'm too that. My passport isn't updated, blah, blah, blah. Because, he had the stroke, he recovered, but I had no idea that there was dementia happening, really. Now I'm super sensitive about dementia, but the dementia was slowly coming about him, and I don't quite know what my inspiration was about going to Montserrat. I knew that he wasn't doing great, but I didn't have the sense of like his imminent death, none of that, I sold his house. He gave me power of attorney. He's like, just handle my life. I sold his house, which is a longer story, and so we had like a little bit of cash. And so I was like, let's go to Montserrat. So we went to Montserrat in 2019 in the summer, and I took the girls, and I'm so grateful I did. Because it was there where he wasn't living with me. I would visit him every day when he was suffering from a stroke, and I took care of him, got his medication, made sure he ate every day. That was the first time that I was actually living in a house with him. And, you know, while he was there, he saw his two best friends. They came over, they spent time. But he was hesitant to get out of bed. When I went in there in the morning, he just did not know where he was. So anyway, so we had this trip. It was a beautiful trip. It was a bittersweet trip. And I knew in that moment, oh, this is the last time he's going to be here. The last time he's going to be in Simon. So flash forward to the fall of 2019. We go to Montserrat in the summer of 2019. In the fall of 2019, he moves in with me. He has another stroke. It's clearly dementia now. Right. I think that, like, at some point in 2020, I think a nurse came to the house. Well, I think some point in 2020, I'd go in the morning. He's diabetic, so I would check his blood sugar, feed him breakfast, etc. But good morning, Daddy, and he looked at me like, "What's wrong?" And I was like, "Good morning, Daddy." He's like, "Why are you calling me that?" Wow. And I was like, "Well, because you're my daddy." Right. He's like, "Oh." I said, "What do you call me?" And let me tell you something. Dementia will make you extra smart, right? Because you're going to, like, be creative, you know? So
figure out what he should say.
Don't play games with me. Right. Like, he was like, "Girl, don't play games with me this morning." And I was like, "You don't know who I am?" Like, yeah, that's what I realized. Right. And, but a nurse came in maybe a couple months after that and said, "Do you know who this young lady is?" And he said, "I don't." He's admitting, "I don't know who she is, but I'm pretty sure she's family." You know. Anyway, 2020, 2021, 2022, the grand year of the 50 is like approaching. Right. And I had not a clue as to how we were going to pay for this very expensive vacation. I am not a person who takes vacations. Okay. I am actually quite a homebody. Okay.
Is there a story behind you not being one for vacations, or is it just you're a homebody and so that's just part of that?
No, I think that it's growing up in a working class family, a working class immigrant family, right? Yeah. So if my parents went away anywhere, we went to Montserrat. I mean, I certainly traveled from a very, very young age back and forth to the Caribbean. But, you know, vacation, like, didn't do vacation because it seemed frivolous. There was always this sense of, we don't have money to do that. If we can scrape a few pennies together, you're going to go and see your grandmother, you know. Now, of course, I realize that is a real lack mentality, and I'm glad that I have shed that, right? But I was not in a habit. I was in the habit of, you go to work and you work. Right. That's it. You know, and to just go somewhere and sit down.
Like, what is that?
You know?
Right.
So if I ever traveled, I went to Italy for a wedding. I went to Cyprus for a wedding. Like, it was a reason why I was going. And so the reason was definitely being like, this is where we're gonna go. And I was like, okay, you know. Right. Interestingly enough, the only times I do remember often traveling with my father. When I was around 11 or 12, he took me to England. I'll tell a story about that trip. Yeah. Probably later on in this conversation. But he took me to England by myself when I was about 11 or 12. He took me to Florida when I was big and grown, like I was probably around 32. Okay. He took me to Florida to visit his sister, and he took me to England to visit his cousin. And I remember when I was divorced from one of those husbands, I think.
You're not gonna start with me today. We are not here for silliness. No, you can tell that part of the story when you get ready too. But let's stay with your father. So somebody was getting their walking papers. All right. Then what?
But my father was a man who loved women. And he was one of the men who flew you out. He flew you out. So I remember when I was telling him, you know, Daddy, I'm not so sure about this husband. He's like, I'm not sure about him either, because he's never even taken you on vacation. Like, Daddy was like, you're supposed to take your woman away. Like,
so he's like, I had my doubts. I had my doubts already.
I had my doubts about it. Like, y'all didn't even go on any trips, you know. Anyway,
that's funny.
As it turned out, it was time for us. Like, we had sort of formed the vacation. We were choosing between one option A and option B. I think that there was like $4,000 difference between option A and option B.
Okay.
And I was like, child, where we going? But, you know, somehow we're going to get this one. And as I was sitting having lunch with a friend who ended up going with us, I got a text message from my partner, Wendy Sherman. And she sent me a text that said, so our trust account just got hit with a big amount of money, like a big amount of money. And I think it's royalties for one of your books. And I was like,
is that right? I love it.
Because you have a sense of like, it was a New York Times bestseller. Let's just bring it out. It was a New York Times bestseller, 7 Days in June.
I remember you talking to me about Tia. That's great.
Yeah. It was a New York Times bestseller, and you get royalties twice a year. But the way that that particular company does it, like, you'll get the money and then you'll get the royalty statement afterwards, because they're two different parts of the publishing company.
Got it.
Anyway, so she wasn't really sure, but she thought that it was, and I was like, whoa. And when I got home, like, we figured out, yeah, no, that's it. We got the royalty statements confirming that was it. And that literal check took me to Africa.
Wow.
Paid for my flight, the hotel, everything.
Wow.
That one check. And so it was there. So it was like this gift. I'm saying this part of the story because I think that there were a lot of things that were working outside of my logical mind. There were things that were working divinely. There were things that the universe were putting into order for me to take this trip. You know what I mean?
I do.
And that was one of them. Literally, I was like, well, I gotta come up with this money by February. I don't know. You know?
From somewhere, right?
I might do a host stroll a couple of nights. I don't know what I need to do.
Did I tell you we're not doing this today? Did I say that? Did I say that? You did not say a host stroll.
My daughter, my 14-year-old, is like, Mommy, you know, they sell pictures of your feet on the internet. I mean, we were just trying to.
I cannot. She was like, long as we brainstorming, I have heard some things.
I sell them feet on the internet. What are you talking about?
Right. So luckily, nobody had to stroll or sell foot pictures.
No strolling and no foot pictures.
Okay.
This check came, and you know, we can talk about this business that I started 7-8 years ago when I was with Align, right? And a lot of what we talked about was the why that we want to do things, you know, and we talked about the vision for the future, and we talked about a library of books that I could talk about, right?
And look at it.
Look at it. I mean, the real library is in front of the computer, but these are the most books. It's just that was just so like, ooh, okay, thank you, universe. This is really supposed to happen. So at that point, we had hospice nurses who came to the apartment every week to check my father's vitals, and I had aides who came every day to bathe him and to help him, which was such a, like, in the height of the pandemic, I wouldn't let anybody into the house. So I did everything on my own. And then when I was able to bring other people in, it was such a relief. So the hospice nurses came in, and one of the things with hospice is they have what is called respite. So for a week, your loved one, they will take your loved one to a nursing home for a week to give you, the caretaker, a break.
Oh, so actually, I just want to pause you there if it's okay, because I think for those of us, and it's truly us, who have not been in the position you're right now describing, right? Like, it's one thing you have children, and that's a certain dynamic. There's a totally different dynamic we're talking about here. And I'm wondering if you could share a little bit about that piece of this journey. Like, what was there for you to need a respite from? You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah. So my father's dementia had developed in such a way that he was unable to feed himself. He was unable to get to the bathroom. He was unable to bathe himself. So in those early days before I had any help job, I would just be like struggling, to lift him up, to feed him, to make him stand up so I could take his diapers off the child. I don't know. Was I talking to you about this? Where I was just like, I remember feeling when he first started getting sick, I was like, oh, well, one thing I know I'm not going to do is be up in his diapers. I don't want to see none of my father's penis. By the end of it, I was like, this penis is like
unmoved, right?
Unmoved, right? Like it's amazing when you set your mind to do a certain thing, and when you set your mind to take care of something. You always think about what you're not going to do, and then time passes and you do it because it's the next thing to do. It's like stages.
Right.
Even as he was getting close to death, like it's literally stages of death. Death for some of us is going to be very quick. Like here I am stepping into the street and here's a bus, right? But there's also the type of death that is stages, and the hospice nurses who are so like, hats off to them to just explain to me, well, this might happen, and then this might happen, and then this might happen. I remember the day that he died, like the weekend he died, everybody kind of knew. The nurses knew. They were telling me. It just so happened that I was in the house alone at the time. I don't think I really was supposed to be. But I remember thinking in those weeks leading up to his death, like, where am I going to be? How am I going to be? I felt like there was this, responsibility. There was a role that I was supposed to play in helping him transition to the other side.
Gotcha.
And I remember feeling like, am I going to be prepared for this? What is this going to be? What is that going to be? Just trying to be in my mind. I was so in my mind about what this looks like. And in that way, my father's death has really very meaningful parallels to my children's birth. Because again, when you're a pregnant woman, I think we're supposed to say person. Let me not start up here on your podcast. When you are a pregnant person.
You get me canceled, we're going to have a problem.
When you're a pregnant person, right? You have this baby inside of you, and there's a stomach growing, and there's certain aches and pains, and the doctor be measuring you, and then they open up your whole leg, and they look up at your cervix, and they tell you this, that about your dilation, all those things. And so there are stages of delivering a baby that in the moment of having a baby are right there, but in like the weeks leading up to the baby, the days leading up to the baby, there's also these stages, right? But the magic minute of birth and the magic minute of death, you don't know. It is the unknown, right? So I remember that last weekend. I remember the hospice nurse telling me, you should count his breaths. Count his chest going up and down, and if you're counting his breaths and they're more than, I'm not going to remember, so let me not give no numbers, but there was a certain number of breaths that I had to count, and if it was higher than those breaths, then I was to give him a little bit of morphine, because he was in distress. Death is something that your body actually fights, right? So if he was breathing in this kind of labored way, then I was to give him some morphine to make it ease. And then from that point forward, the breaths would get slower and slower and slower.
Wow.
Yeah, so I would have to give him morphine if his breathing got too high, because it meant that his body was in distress. Because the body is designed to fight death. And after the morphine, then his breath would get slower and slower and slower until he stopped. Right.
Got it.
So yeah, that's what it means to be in hospice. That's what it means to be basically a death doula, which is what I was.
Wow.
You know, at the time, I remember being very. I was checking on him. You know, he had his oxygen machine. There was he was bed bound, and so there was like a special pipe sort of contraption on his bed that made airflow constant. He had an air flowing pad on his bed, but his skin had been lovely. So I had a Jamaican woman who took care of him, honey. She used to wash him up and rub him down with Vaseline. You know, like when you rub down babies and they're all greasy. People probably don't do that anymore, but you and I, the last
we know. Yeah, I was gonna say we know of this. Yes.
Just shiny for no reason and greasy, right? So his skin was beautiful, but in those last weeks, his skin is deteriorating. So while this is happening, I am determined to continue on this trip. And there was never a question that I wasn't going to go. And so with the hospice nurses, we were arranging for the respite for him to be in a nursing home while I was away. I now understand I understand this. I don't know this, right? So there's a difference.
Yeah.
I feel in my body that Daddy was like, nursing home?
For what?
Nah. And he was just like, let me check out now, because I ain't trying to go no nursing home. Yeah. And I want baby girl, whoever this girl is. Whoever this girl is. Although he did propose to me. Like the last words I remember him saying, I told you my father liked women.
Yeah, so he's like, well, she's cute and she seems to be awfully interested in me.
And he was just like, there you are. He's like, I was just thinking about you. I said, were you? He said, yes. And I said, you know, if I see that girl again, I'm gonna tell her that I think we should get married. And I was like, oh. Don't you think we should get married? And I was like, well, but I'm your daughter. And I don't think daughters are allowed to marry their fathers. Let me tell you, let me just give anybody who's listening to this some advice about dealing with dementia and Alzheimer's. Don't argue with them.
I was going to ask that. I was going to say, how much do you say, no, that's not right. Yeah. Okay.
No, roll with it. If you walk in and he's just like, where'd you come from? And I was like, I don't know. I said, where are we today? He was like, well, we're in Albany. And I was like, oh,
okay.
Just roll with it. Because constantly telling them that they're not remembering, that they already said it, that you're not who I am, correcting them is stressful. It's confusing and stressful. So here's Daddy saying, I think we should get married. And I said, well, but I'm your daughter. Are we allowed to get married? And he was like, you're my daughter. It's like, oh no, if you're my daughter, it's off.
Then no, right. It's off. I like it's off. I hate to break this to you, sweetie, because I can tell you like me, but you're my daughter, so.
He was like, yes, you're not allowed to marry your daughter.
Right.
But I think that in his mind, he was like, nah. He was completely nonverbal.
Yeah.
But these are conversations that I'm having with nurses over his head, right?
Yeah, right.
So he was like,
yeah, no.
I think he just decided to check out. And I think that he wanted me to have a trip. Wanted me to go and have a great trip, free of any worry and concern. Because I was I told my mother that I was going. I told my mother late, child, because Diety, my mother, my darling mother, when it was like, that whole thing about not taking vacation, pinching the pennies. That is pure Diana. Okay. So she would have been like, you're going to do what? You know? So I was like, let me just get to the very end of the situation before I tell her this. Anyway, when I told her that I was leaving, she says, well, I suppose you need a break. She says, but before you go, we are going to plan your father's entire funeral. Oh. It is going to be planned and paid for before you leave. And we did. Like maybe 6 weeks before he died, we did. We went there, spent the day, picked out the casket, the flowers, the programs. Every single detail was done. Because she was just like, just in case.
Right. Now, I guess so. I'm going to ask these together and you answer. So one is, there's a lot of process you're talking me through. And I know that in some ways that's you, right? And then frankly, you know, that's a lot of the women I've known in my lifetime that like, there's things that's got to get done, right? And I get that part. But you were also a daughter who was processing the decline of her father and dealing with details of like this impending moment. As you said, the magic moment, you don't know when it's going to be. I guess I'm wanting to hear a little bit about that. And even as you were caretaking, I mean, again, you know, you mentioned the morphine and how much breathing, but yes, though, that's the mechanics of it. But yeah, there's a life underneath that I'm wondering about.
Yeah, I think that's a very good question. I think there's a period of time when I was his caretaker that I was not his daughter. I couldn't be both. There was a period early on in the caretaking. I mean, I'm in the role as a caretaker because I'm his daughter, period, right?
Right.
But there was a period of time I remember being really frustrated with my siblings who were really absent through all of this. And I remember being really frustrated with them. And I said to somebody, I mean, he has 2 kids who are not even paying attention to this, you know? And it was like I didn't count myself as his child. I think I was absolutely in caretaker mode and not in daughter mode. There were pockets when I was like, let me be really intentional about sitting down with him and being a daughter and asking him daughter things and talking to him as a daughter. We definitely had that in the earlier stages of his illness. In the later stages of his illness, it was very, and even as I'm like counting down his breath, I remember at some point taking a shower. This girl needed a shower. So the girl, me, went and took a shower. And when I came out of the shower and I put on, you know, my clothes, my lotion, child, little perfume, because my father likes nice perfume and it smells good.
See, this is why the man wants to marry you. See, look at you now.
I walked into the room and he was gone. And people said that to me. They were like, he's probably going to wait till you're not in the room. And I remember being like, not breathing. He's really not breathing. And just being all up in my head about it. Not like, my first thing was not to cry. My first thing was like,
what I do?
Wow. It happened.
Wow.
He's, you know, and just being, and I went into the next room. I went into the dining room and I sat down and I picked up the phone because I was trying to think of who to call first.
Right.
That's when I started to cry. You ain't gonna have me crying up here either.
No, you're okay. You're okay.
Yeah, that's when I started to cry. That's when it occurred to me, oh, my father.
Right.
You know.
Yeah. Not your patient or the.
Not my patient, not my, you know, the nurses used to say to me, oh my gosh, you take such good care of your father. Like, you know, because I had like the Excel spreadsheet of medication and this and that. And this was his blood sugar at 8 o'clock this morning. This was his blood sugar at 12:25. This was his blood sugar at 6. You know, like very like in my brain, like I am doing this. But yeah, the emotion of it like came later. Definitely came later.
So there are two phases in terms of emotion coming later.
Yeah.
Because this and I'll point out that it was on your return from Africa, from Kenya, that and the safari and the whole thing, and I've been seeing the pictures and just loving it. That we got to talk a little bit, and I thought, ooh, there's layers to this, as we say, right?
Yeah.
So the work was done. The work you had taken on as a daughter was done.
Yeah.
And then you took your trip, and you then came back. And as you walk through that, I'm wondering, did you have an opportunity, like as the emotion hit you as you made the call, did you find yourself snapped back to the daughter side of things, or was there a transition over this time to like processing, oh wow, like I went through all of that? I just quickly will say that one of the things that I've learned about funerals is that part of the power of them is they give us all something to do. Right, so there's this buffer region where we're, like you said, right, which casket, oh, the suit, I gotta get I remember running around town to find the right tie shirt combination when my father died. Like, respectfully, the man's dead, like just grab a tie and a shirt. But I was like, no. we not burying him in no questionable combination, I'm gonna tell you that right now.
Yeah, right? Exactly.
You know,
those little details matter. Yeah.
So I think we can be, and especially the types like us who tend to take control of things, we can consume ourselves with all that. But when that's gone, did you feel a vacuum? Did it?
Oh
yeah. Like how'd that all work?
Yeah, I mean, how I always say that Daddy like planned this very well, because he died on June 5th, which gave me just enough time to finalize the things for his funeral, like his tie shirt combination, and socks and underwear. He was like, "Well, bring some underwear." I was like, "Underwear?"
Right.
They were like, "He needs underwear." Like, okay. He ain't gonna be flying and flopping in the edit.
Show up at the pearly gates like, "Excuse me, sir."
We have a dress code in here, and you are underdressed. Yeah, I mean, there was the flowers that were amazing. I don't know, these people who say in lieu of flowers. Not me. Send me all the flowers. I want all the flowers. I want all the fruit baskets. I want it all. I want all the cards. I kept all the cards. You know, I spent a good amount of time in that week working on his obituary, which was very long and very detailed and like a story. Like, I did spend a lot of time doing that, and I grieved all through that. And I do remember being very deliberate, intentional about pausing while I was doing certain things and asking myself, what are you feeling right now?
Oh,
I did that often, and it was really good that I did it. I don't know where I got that from. I must have been something. It must have been some podcast or somebody who told me to do that. I would just pause and say, oh, right now I feel really angry. Or right now I feel really, I remember having moments where I felt angry. I remember having moments where I felt confused. I remember having moments when I felt lonely. And I think loneliness was the dominant thing.
Now, as you describe that, first, it strikes me as incredibly healthy. Just fundamentally, right? Like to just be present with what you're feeling, the whole deal. I guess I'm wondering how that impacted how you were interacting with the people around you? Because my sense of it is you were, running the show, but then a funeral shows up, like funerals, whoo, there can be some dynamics.
Child.
Okay. So,
oh my goodness.
So I'm wondering, did that help you with the dynamics?
I was very, very isolated because we had done all the planning, let's say 4 weeks before. There wasn't a lot of stuff that I was doing. So I was really like in my house, in front of this computer, just like I am now, working on his obituary.
Yeah.
A friend of mine took my daughters to get their outfits.
Gotcha.
Child, they showed up to that funeral. She used to be the fashion editor. She was a fashion editor in New York for a long time. So they came like, I'm like, this is like Tyra Banks does funeral. Like, what are we doing here? Like, I remember when we were walking into the funeral, people looked and they were just like, because my daughters are like super tall, and they had these little black dresses on and some heels, and I'm in the middle of that, and it was like, well, what's happening there?
Wow.
It was like Fashion Week in Harlem, honey.
It worked, and it worked for them, didn't it? I get the sense.
Of course.
Yeah, I get the sense. Sense.
Lauren was all about it. So hot.
Love it.
So that she did that, I mean, but I did feel very isolated. And I felt very alone, and the day after the funeral, I had another friend who was like, what do you need? I was like, well, I think we need a repast. She found a place. So I didn't do anything. Maybe I picked out the food,
wow.
but it was all like people came in, it was like, so I didn't feel really in charge of anything. I was really on my own. I was really allowed to process a lot of these feelings, so that they wouldn't like build up on me. I remember being like, my father had a second wife, John, who I don't have many good things to say about. And I just remember being like, I know this woman ain't gonna show up at this funeral. I know she's not gonna come. I ain't gonna even worry about it because she's not gonna come. Because there was a point in time when I told my sister, her child, like, your mother did a lot of mess. So if I see her in the street,
it's gonna be a situation
on site. You know what I mean? It was very Cardi B. Like, it's on site. I don't care how old she is. Her old ass will get beat up in the street.
Right. Just so we're all clear. Like, she can't say she didn't know.
Can't say she didn't know.
Right.
And I was like, but so when my father died, I was like, this woman ain't gonna come. But she did. She walked in. I was at the door greeting everybody. I was like the hostess. I woke up that morning. I was gonna wear this black dress, but I woke up that morning and I was like, oh, Daddy doesn't want me to wear black. Daddy doesn't want me to wear black. So I wore this like African print top. I was all, yeah. I got my hair done. You know how we all buy our hair. I got my hair colored and done, which actually I had gotten it colored. I already had the appointment because I was going to Africa.
Your trip.
Yeah, because I was going on a trip. Yeah, it wasn't until the next day, after the funeral, my daughters went to spend the night with their grandmother because their cousins were there. So they had their whole little cousins get together.
Right.
And I woke up and the hospice had given us the bed, the oxygen machine, all of those things. They came like the day after he died.
Wow.
And removed all of that stuff. But I got up in that morning. I had rented a car because I wanted a really big car so that a lot of people could get in it. I returned the car rental. There was a slight rain, a little drizzle that night, and it was Enterprise. So they offered to drive me home. Call Enterprise, we'll come pick you up. But I was like, no, I'm going to walk. I had my little umbrella and I walked home. Maybe that was a 15-minute walk, a 20-minute walk. And it was just so nice to just walk, you know. And when I was getting closer to the house, I realized that I hadn't eaten anything. So I said, you know what, I'm going to stop at this little restaurant. I'm going to sit down by myself and have breakfast. I'm sure that I was teary-eyed. It was so easy. I'm an easy cry. But I was teary-eyed walking. I sat down, I had breakfast, I was a little teary-eyed. And then I thought, oh, I need my malaria pill. So I walked to the CVS. Now, first of all, and then I came home. By this point, let's call it 11:30.
Okay.
And I came in and I sat in the living room. And the entire apartment was silent. And I was like, I was like, why is it so quiet in here? And I realized the oxygen machine wasn't going, the airflow that wasn't going. I had an air filter in this room that had been turned off. So like all of that ambient noise of illness and transition was no longer there. And that was when I sat down and I was just like, my entire life. Right. And I was very aware in that moment, the morning after his funeral, I was like, oh. Because for the previous 3 years, I got up in the morning, I went into the room to check on him. I went into the room to change his diaper. I went into the room to take his blood sugar. I went into the room to, I had a checklist, first thing in the morning checklist. So there was no way that I could be away from the house until 11:30. Like that actually did not exist because someone had to be responsible for my father's morning ritual and then leading up into his lunch ritual, you know, and like I was like, I don't. And was it a relief? Because I remember talking to you around this time, asked me whether there was relief, and I don't know. It was kind of a relief for him and for me, but it was also just like, what do I do with this time? You know, how do I fill this time? Because that time had been so filled with like the busy work, had been so filled with playing this role, and now that role is not there.
Yeah. And
then you have to like sit with yourself. I'm glad I'm cute and I can sit with myself.
Oh,
but
agreed. Now, okay, so you had this time and you're sitting, you know, with yourself.
Yeah.
I guess I'm wondering.
And maybe 4 days later we left for Africa.
Okay. So actually that leads me right there. So you leave for Africa, and this space in your life you probably anticipated needing to check in and all this stuff, and that's all now away.
Well, I couldn't check in. That was part of it. Like once you go into the bush in the Serengeti, ain't nothing. Like, and I told my mother, like, if Daddy for whatever reason passes away while I'm away, y'all gonna have to put him up in the fridge. Don't tell me. Don't even try and call me. Don't try to email me because there's nothing I can do. I am literally in the bush. You're flown into the bush. You're flown out of the bush.
Right. So that's that. Yeah.
I am. So, but it was still just like, you know, canceling. I remember the social worker calling me. She's like, so I guess we don't need him to go into respite. And I was like, I guess not. So we can cancel. We can cancel the ambulance coming to get him. That type of thing. But yeah, it was like 4 or 5 days later, I finished packing. And one of my good friends who went with me on the trip, her gift to me was to upgrade all of my international flights to business class.
Come on now.
Okay.
Come on.
It's a mess. Now, you know, I'm too good for it all.
You expect me to do what?
So it's 4 days later, I buried my father. I'm in the airplane. When I went to England with my father, I was 11, 12, probably 11. The stewardess, the flight attendant, came down the aisle with that big old trolley. And she asked my father what he wanted to drink. And he said tomato juice.
Mm.
And I looked at him like, you don't drink what? Like, I known my father my whole life at that point. I have never seen the man drink anything called tomato juice. I've never seen my mother bring no tomato juice in the house. Like, tomato juice.
What is happening, right?
What is happening? And he ordered tomato juice. And I looked at him and he's like, yes, this is what I order when I'm on a flight. And I was like, really? Okay.
Right.
So here I get into, me and this luxury experience. I'm sitting down, the woman hands me the menu, the paper menu jar, like with the champagne. And she's like,
love it.
Take your order. And she comes down, but no trolley because it's business class. I don't know how she came down with the food, but she comes in. Magic. And the man sitting in front of me says, I'd like a tomato juice with salt. And I was like, my daddy.
Wow.
Like,
wow.
Okay.
Yeah. And those, I know, and you take your time. But I'll say no, really, because I know, like I sometimes share this story that my mom had passed away, and we're processing, and I'm sitting in the room, and my mother was notorious in the family. She'd call you about some random news story. Often she was the one knew this much about computers, was always the one letting everybody know there was a new virus. Like, okay. Mommy, I gotta go, mommy. What are you talking about? Right. But she just was always the one that would call with these little stories, and she would call me with, with silly stuff. And there was this story about some people and they hit the number, but this one, it just a silly little news story, local news. Yeah. And when I tell you, I fell apart in this room because I was like, she would have called me about this story. This is exactly the kind of story she would have called with. And, it was, so as you describe that man ordering the tomato juice, I just...
with salt, pepper, and lemon.
I mean, wow.
And I was like, okay, Daddy, I'm exactly where you want me to be. You're right here.
Mm-hmm. Now that...
I ordered the salt. I ordered it too.
You did? Oh, great. I love it. I love it.
I ordered it too with salt, pepper, and lemon, which was an upgrade, right?
Yeah.
From what he had ordered.
Yeah. So you have that experience, and you just said you felt that he was there with you then. I have found that I feel more in touch with the whole, I've said for years, I believe we are one, and all sorts of ideas that go along with that. And in recent years, I felt more like I feel the presence, the energy of the folks who, are close to me, but no longer with us, right?
Yeah.
I'm wondering how much that has played out for you. You had that moment, but I get the sense as you describe it that that's sort of part of your life now. And I'm wondering how it shows up. How does, your father show up?
In a million ways. One of the things, in the Caribbean, especially in Montserrat, I'm sure, and many other islands, you don't have your name. There's like the name you have on your birth certificate, and then there's the name everybody calls you. Right. And my father's name was Bulb. B-U-L-B.
Okay.
And I had my uncle tell the story of how he got the name Bulb. He had told me, but he told me a much more sanitized version of it. But the bottom line is that he, as a young man, I remember writing this in his obituary, and that's when I felt anger. As a young man, my father was very innovative, very ambitious, very forward thinking, always. So, he was born in 1938. So let's say this is the 1940s, the late 1940s in Montserrat. Nobody had electricity. You did not have light inside your house.
Right.
Certainly no TV, nothing like that. And no electricity inside the house. But my father figured out, and he was like 12, 14. He was young.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know how he figured this out, but he figured out that he could string a light bulb. So he got an old car engine, I believe. It was either car engine or radio. And he fixed it up.
So they could run a current through there.
But he could just do a light bulb. So he did it with this light bulb. And so his house had light because of this one light bulb, right? I think it was a car engine. So somebody apparently saw that this young man did this very ingenious thing and tried to replicate it and borrowed his light bulb.
Oh.
But when they gave him the light bulb back, he put it back on and it wouldn't light up. And he discovered that the bulb bust. So the bulb burst. You know what? When a light bulb lights.
Yeah, the bulb. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Blow bulb. So his actual nickname was Blow Bulb because he was like, he went after this guy. He said, "You blow my bulb. You blow my bulb."
I love it. I love it. I love it.
Right? From that point forward, which got shortened to bulb.
Bulb. That's great.
Maybe 2 days after he died, 3 days after he died, while I'm working on this story about bulb, my kitchen light bulb went out.
And you're like, okay, come on now.
I didn't at the time. I was just like, oh, for God's sake, now I gotta change this light bulb.
Oh, really?
I had to go get me a chair. I had to change the light bulb. That one blew too. And when the second one blew, I was like, okay, Daddy, you're here. I know you're here. You know, when I came back from Africa, your girl Lauren, my oldest, it's a 3-bedroom apartment. She comes to me. She was like, "Mommy, no, this is before I went to Africa." She said, "Mommy, can we have a conversation?" So I don't want to be insensitive, and I know that you're grieving. I don't want to be insensitive, and I know that you're grieving.
Yes.
So you just let me know at what point we can talk about me moving into your room and having my own room. Because she was sharing a room with her sister.
Right. She's like, things have shifted. I just want to stick a pin in the room conversation. Right. Got it. Got it, Lauren.
When do we think we can start having this conversation?
I love it. I
was like, well, I'm going to Africa in 4 days. So
on the other side of that, for sure, right?
So on the other side of that, you know, we moved all the furniture around. We did all the stuff with the furniture. I painted Daddy's room. I flipped things around. I got new curtains. I just, you know, now you walk in there and it's a whole different space. And I moved into the room. I am a girl who, you put me down to sleep, especially if you put me down to sleep the right way, I'm going to be asleep all night. Like, if there is a fire,
that's that.
Wake me up because I will die in the flames. Like, I ain't waking up enough, right?
Right.
I sleep through the night. I mean, I wake up at 5 in the morning, just up and ready to attack the world, but I don't wake up in the middle of the night. When I first moved into Daddy's room, which is now my room, I would open my eyes, look at my watch, and it was 2:22. And I'd be like, oh, that's weird. Well, let me try and go back to sleep. And then the fourth time, and every time, like the next week I woke up 2:22. And twice the next week, 2:22. And I was like, okay, that's Daddy. That's Daddy too. He's just like, hi, I'm still chilling. Because 2:22 was an angel number.
Oh. See,
so,
you know, and I'm glad you're bringing up these experiences. I mean, cut you over. I'm glad you're bringing up these experiences because one of the things I've been saying, experiences folks have shared with me. I have a friend who lost their mom and was telling me about, you know, feeling some. Just because we can't explain it, don't mean it ain't so. I'm not saying I can explain what happened. I'm just saying if folk are having the experiences they're having those experiences, and there's really no negating that. Like you can't, like, it's just that is the experience they're having. And so I guess I'm, as you point to, 222, and I'm that sense of he's good, he's all right. How do you take that forward? Like, what's life been like since? You talked about the time of, the actual physical time, like 11:30 is not your automatic starting point anymore. What's that piece been like for you?
Just been comforting. The 222, the light bulb, the tomato juice, all just like comfort. I think I had said earlier on in this conversation that the most dominant feeling I'd had when he died was lonely. And so all of these other indicators are like, no.
Yeah.
Child, what are you trying to do?
I'm not. But I wanted people to
Barbara Walters is happening.
Because I wanted you to share, because when we talked, I was like, this is absolutely, well, also we had spoken throughout, right? So over the years, as you were taking care of your father, I mean, it was just, and I kept telling you that I would, if someone said to me, what is a way you can know that the way you lived was worth it? It would be to have a child care for and about me the way I watched you care for and about your father. Like, truly, and we talked about this at the time, right? I said to you, I was like, this is like such a testimony to what this man, means to you, meant to you, and who you are. So no, it's not that I enjoy watching my good friend cry, but I did want people to experience this, because it wasn't you did it out of love, but that didn't make it easy. And I think more and more people are doing it.
I think more and more people are doing it. More and more people have the opportunity to do it. 1 million people told me to put him in a nursing home. At the time that I would have put him in a nursing home was January 2019, and we all know what happened. January 2020, and we all know what happened in March 2020. It would have been, he would have absolutely died in a nursing home by himself, connected to some breathing machine. I'm completely sure of that, right? I don't regret it for 5 seconds, I promise you. I don't even know how to imagine having made a different choice. I don't even know. I feel very lucky that we had that time, that intensive time together.
Yeah, that's really beautiful.
I think that, as I said earlier on in this conversation, there were stages where I was like, oh, I can't do this. And then anytime the situation presented itself, that's what I did. Like, I just grew into being able to do certain things for him. So it was very much about, for me, it was very much about the spiritual growth.
Yeah.
In the middle of it, right? I'm taking care of him, but I'm actually also growing as a human being.
In that process. So I do want to ask about the trip itself, because I feel like we've given it the context, and yes, but it was also amazing to see these pictures of you all sun-kissed, and just I was like, she is just out there living. She living out there. So tell us a little bit about that experience.
Get to Africa. Can I just tell you, I being of Monstrosian heritage, I have never had this, like, I need to go to Africa. I've never had that.
Right.
Because my homeland, the motherland for me, is Montserrat. Like, literally. Like, this is where my grandfather buried. This is where my great-grandfather buried. This is where my great-grandmother buried. Like, that's my place.
Right.
That's, multiple generations of my family from 1802 or something. Wow. I can trace back to that island. So literally, the house. This is the land where this person was. This is the land that. You know what I mean? So I never had this sense of like my foundation is this continent.
Vague, right?
Which I think that. Right. There was a period of time when Black Americans, when we were in college, 10 years ago, and we were wearing the Ankh. You remember the Ankh?
Yes. Oh, and the black medallions. Like,
I didn't have that. Not that I didn't have an appreciation for Africa, but like Montserrat is where I was from. Mm-hmm. So I gotta tell you, when we landed in first we landed in Ethiopia, then we landed we flew over, oh wow, I'm forgetting the name of this airport, but it's where Kilimanjaro is.
Okay.
So half the people that were on our plane were going to hike Kilimanjaro.
Oh wow.
We got off the plane and I was like, and we were ushered into this private check-in area. And a woman said to me, and it looked like Montserrat to me. It looked just like Montserrat to me. I was like, oh, this is like a small Montserrat airport, boo boo. Like, it just felt, and I said, oh, this is like my home. And she said, oh, are you South African? And I was like, no. She's like, oh, she's like, you're built like a South African.
All right.
South African have my body shape.
Got it. Okay.
So she's like, oh, you're built like a South African girl.
I like the hands, though.
That's exactly what she said.
Yeah, because no matter where we are in the diaspora, we really think we have the right to just describe.
Oh my God. It was funny because we went to the marketplace while we were there and the men were really acting kind of weird. And I was like, everybody in Africa got a behind. Like, I don't got no special behind, but apparently I don't have a Tanzanian behind.
So
I have a South African behind.
So this was novel. It
was novel for them, child. I was like, well, you gonna give me a discount on this plan? On this picture?
Love it.
Anyway, but when we landed in the bush in the Serengeti, and immediately we started seeing animals. We got into this Jeep and it was elevated. So like there was this row and then a little higher, second row, then a little higher, third row, right? And our driver was a man named James, young guy. We just started seeing the gazelles. We saw giraffes the first night on our way to the camp. Pull up to the camp and James hops out and all these people who worked at the camp come running out to greet our Jeep. And they start singing in Swahili, baby.
Oh, what?
And it's basically like we welcome.
Right.
And then James is like, he comes over and he got his drum.
So they're playing the music.
I started to cry. They're playing this music. And it was so like, oh, we're here. We're actually here. Like that's when we'd spent the night in Arusha. That's where we were. We landed in Arusha. We spent the night in Arusha. Again, it felt like I'm in some kind of Caribbean island. Like, we saw some monkeys, which was kind of interesting. Like, what's a monkey? But it didn't feel like we returned someplace.
Right.
But once we got to the bush and they were singing in Swahili about welcoming us, I was like, wow, this is what it is. Like, we made it home. We made it home.
That's really, well, it's funny because as I was thinking about this conversation, it's really fascinating that you landed on that phrase there about making it home. Because I was struck by the idea of your father's home going and you're going home. that just sort of like, as I was thinking about our conversation, that struck me. And yeah, I mean, you were there and you were welcomed. How much, I guess because you were in a different place. So we sort of talked about what it was like to come back to your apartment where that was all whatever, but you were in a different place. How much of the processing was of that, all of it? Yeah. Sorry, go ahead.
Otherwise, it was like plain and flat, and it felt like I was like one person or one dot in like an infinite flame. That's how it felt. And I felt so comforted by that. You know, I felt so soothed by that.
Right.
So like it was literally like these drives. I was with my friends, my most cherished friends, and it was perfect to be there with them.
Yeah.
And we would giggle and carry on and act out on the bus. But we also were very meditative. It was a meditation. The whole ride was just like a meditation in calm, and to feel yourself dissolve into some sort of infinite flame.
Something bigger.
I know that
yourself.
sounds real woo-woo.
You know, the older I get, the more woo I get, if I'm honest. So don't worry about it. But no, it's funny because you spoke to loneliness.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
But then you went to this vast space and didn't feel lonely at all. Felt quite the opposite, right?
No. Felt like I was one with all of it, you know?
Love it.
And then the last day we hunted for the male lion for a long time. We saw everything. We saw every single animal, to the point where my friend Vicky, her husband, we sent him a picture. He was just like, I'm looking at these pictures. Are y'all in a zoo? Like y'all see.
How are you doing this? Love it.
But the male lion, you know, is very evasive. You know, all he does is have sex
and benefit from whatever else is doing.
Yeah. This is somewhere where he's supposed to be protecting, but right? So we were like, oh, but the last day we saw the lion. And when I tell you that it was 2 male lions, I said, oh, this is a sign. Husband number 3 coming up. Must be. Because it one lion, it was 2 lions.
Right.
James said that they were brothers. I was like, James, those are gay lovers. And but let me not.
You're gonna get these poor lions in trouble now. You like, you know, they living their life.
I was like, that's Adam and Steve. That's what that's about. You know,
that's funny.
They were sleeping with each other, and one got up and walked away, and the other one was like, "Where my boy at?" and came down with him. And then they walked off into the sunset together. But in the meantime, literally, they were like right here. Like,
wow.
They walked right past our van. Like, who cares? There's some
whatever.
It was also amazing to be Black women on this trip. Because, I mean, maybe because it was Tanzania. I do hear that people say Kenya is different, but we didn't see nobody Black.
Really?
The workers were all Black, obviously.
Right, but
the
in
drivers
terms of
were all Black. But in terms of people who were on the trip, no. To the point where, so what happens is that this Jeep is driving along, this Jeep is driving along this way. The 2 of them stop and speak to each other in Swahili.
Okay.
I don't know what they're saying, but I would notice that the driver of the other van would be like, oh, like.
I don't recognize them.
I don't recognize that, but and he'd be like, okay, James, like James got a whole car full of girls, right?
Really?
But I think they were also talking like, there's a lion over here, there's a kill over there, right? You could see elephants behind this rock over here. So they were having that conversation. Did I tell you that the white people in the other van would be looking at us like they were looking at the safari?
Nuh-uh.
Yes, they were. I'd be like, oh my God. They would just be like, oh.
That's so fast. Like what, you know what I mean? You kind of go, well, yeah, anyway.
The same thing you're doing, but we were it was beautiful. The last night we were there, they sang us happy birthday. They gave us individual cakes and they sang several songs to us. Stephanie's mother melted into tears. They sang the Tanzanian national anthem. Like, it was just overwhelming.
And now with it in your rear view, do you feel, I mean, obviously to be welcomed and the cry, what you're describing about Stephanie's mom, I would imagine that there would be these moments. I mean, there's just so much built into, right? Do you feel it's impacted you since your return?
It was a life-changing trip. You know, it was a life-affirming trip. It was, God help me, I love Black men. So to be around all those Black men who were so strong and healthy and about their work and interested in their different things, and felt like, it just felt like safe, It felt very safe. It felt very, like, we felt very embraced and taken care of. And yeah, like all the guys were just, they treated us so well, they were, and I, my cousin was just like, Cherise, because we're American. And I was like, no. Rich Americans who came on this trip. It was different. It was different. It was a different energy where they were just like, our sisters are here, It just really felt that way. So I don't know if I have to say I did bring it back, because I brought back everything, I mean, I lived through life just collecting, right? These experiences to help me understand myself better. But all of it was comfort. All of it was the meditation. We then went to Zanzibar and we saw the slave castles there.
Yeah.
Marketplace there. That was very gripping. We luxuriated hard, y'all. We were like, we 50.
Like do it.
We are luxuriating. I did a cold plunge. Can I just tell this story?
Yeah.
So we had these beautiful, our hotel rooms were like little tiny houses. And outside of each house was a cold plunge. And each of us was like, we're going to do it. We're going to do it. So I did my cold plunge and I set up a camera just so that I could like have a countdown of me doing it. And just to prove myself that I did it. So I did it. I totally buck naked. I did the cold plunge and I came up, but and then I took the picture, or I thought I took the picture.
Yes.
So I sent the picture to my cousin when I got back. He was like, yes, so you might not want to share that picture.
Uh-oh.
I was like, why? Because apparently, like, if you held it down, you actually saw me jumping up and down. But it was freeing.
I bet.
It was about freedom.
And that was the birth of your OnlyFans account. And that's how it all came together. No.
It was freeing. It was welcoming. It felt very safe, very protective, very taken care of. All of those things were absolutely what my father was to me. His whole trick in life was to indulge me. There was nothing that I could ask him that he wouldn't give me. There was nothing that he wouldn't give for me. Very protective, but also very safe. You could tell daddy anything. You can't tell mommy anything, child, because you're going to get a whole bunch of conversation. But he was always, daddy, like if I went and got my nails done, daddy, got your nails done. He always would notice, That's one of those men. And then it was like, here I am, like being served food and being helped into a jeep and having my, my luggage child. Yeah, I remember one point Stephanie was like, let's take our bags to the villa. And I was like, let's take our what to the where?
You must not know about me.
Must not know about me. Or about this week, right? And so having come back, I will tell you, coming back, my daughters hate this, but they do kind of hate this. I'm like, your mother is now in her soft era. They were like, what, mommy? I'm like, I am in my soft era.
Okay.
What does that mean? It means that life, there is no struggle anymore. we're not hustling. We are sitting in expectation of all the good things that are coming to us. We are We're going to really prioritize taking care of I'm going to prioritize taking care of myself. I am going to really enjoy this phase of reaping the benefits of the things that I have worked for, right? Because now I'm aligned, coming all the way back. Like now I'm where I'm supposed to be. It's not to say that I don't have ambition, I do, but it's a different way of expecting the good things to happen. And the good things just keep happening, Orlando.
I love it. I mean, hey, look over your shoulder. And we did, we did talk about this. I mean, I think sometimes people, we specifically said there's this shelf and the kids, it's a library. So it's amazing to
the library.
Yeah, I remember that.
You remember this book, Sadiq's book, right?
Yellow Wife, yeah.
This is my, when you and I talked, she was just doing Love in a Carry-On Bag. This is her fourth book. This is her fifth book coming out February 7th.
I saw something about that, and amazing.
And now we're working on our sixth book.
I'm blown away.
It's amazing. It's all sort of, and so now, like you put in the 10,000 hours in the beginning. I'm not saying that I don't have work to do. I'm not saying that I work a lot. I do. But now I have this feeling of like, there's no desperation at all.
I love that.
There's no desperation. There's no worry. There is receive all of it,
Yeah.
If it's for you, it's for you. If it's not for you, it's not for you. But you will always have enough. That's what it is when I'm sitting there thinking, how am I going to pay for this trip? And I get a text with exactly the amount of money to take this trip.
Right.
And a little more. You know what I mean? Like, it's just sort of like, everything is going to fall. Everything has fallen into place so that I can have this soft life, because it wasn't a soft life when I was taking care of Daddy. It wasn't. It was like, I have an injury in my shoulder from moving him.
Wow.
It's very, very light, but like he was always very afraid to fall, so he would fight me if I'm trying to move him or anything. The other thing about him during his illness was that he retreated into childhood. That's a whole other conversation that we're not going to start, but he retreated into childhood. It's interesting how you were a daughter, but as his caretaker, I was also very much his mother.
Yeah.
And he would call me mother sometimes. He would call me mama sometimes.
Because of the level of care.
Because of the level of care, but also because he had a very traumatic childhood. He had a father who was very abusive. And it really haunted him his entire life. I think that's why he was such a super gentle father, because his father was a brute, right? And one of the things that I became aware of while I was taking care of him, like his body would be very tight, and I realized, if we don't deal with our trauma now, literally, like if we don't confront our anger, our fears, our obsessions, if we don't process that stuff, we meaning children of immigrants, I think Black people, we are very much in this mode of like, grip it, hold it in, forward. That ain't it, boo.
It ain't. It really.
We can't, because it will literally paralyze our bodies if it doesn't kill us.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
If it literally doesn't kill us, it will paralyze our life. And there's like, my father was a physical manifestation of someone who didn't process things, who didn't forgive when he needed to forgive, who didn't shout when he needed to shout, who hid a lot of stuff, right? That really took over his body in the last 2 years of his life.
Right.
And you know, I have to really honor him by not following that legacy.
Right.
You know?
Yeah.
Forgive who I need to forgive, love who I need to love, let go who I need let go who I need to let go.
That's so real. That's so real. And not my instinct in life. And even there've been times when I'm like, so and so needs to be let go. And just say it is work for me. This is not my,
it's work to let it go. It's work to let it go. It's work to let it go. But we have to. And it's like freeing our body, freeing our mind, and just enjoy the fruits of that freedom. Like that's what Africa was. It was enjoying the fruit of a certain freedom that I have at this big 50-year age that I am.
And I'll say it's funny you say that about the fruit, because as you were describing this, soft space in life, I thought you truly have earned it. I mean, you put the work in. I mean, it's not like you one day said, "Oh, I like books." I mean, you worked your way up and through publishing. You've been an editor-in-chief, right? Like this isn't just like you've really you've earned your way to that moment.
And don't we all have to recognize that we've earned it? Don't we all have to recognize that? Don't we all have to pause and recognize it?
I'm in the midst of a moment very similar to that to myself, so it's very interesting to bump into that. But yeah, maybe we have earned a little, being a little nicer to ourselves. I will share quickly that I realized I don't even fully know how to process when I've done enough work and I'm tired, because I've spent my entire life ignoring that feeling. But I've spent the last couple of years just like learning that, like, oh, I'm tired. Like, I never paid this any attention before, so it was sort of an irrelevant thing. And so anyway, but I think that what you're describing is incredibly important, that we not carry that legacy forward. And I've even talked to my cousin is a doctor, a psychiatrist, and he did a whole study where he was like, a lot of the things that we blame on soul food or this or that, it's that Black folks walking around with heightened cortisol levels for decades. I mean, at some point your body we're not built to handle that kind of stress all the time. So there's all that. The last piece, because you and I have done twice this long a conversation just because we felt like it, right? So I don't want to, but I do want to ask this, and it's, as life has it, I probably would have asked the more general version, but as life has it, I have a friend who, in the time since we set up this interview, she lost her father. She and this is like last day or two that I found out about this, and so in a very similar way had taken her father into her home. I mean, it's sort of wild to me that I got the news in this moment where I was thinking about our conversation. And I guess as you look back to the safari, and you look back to writing the obituary and this time since, and you've been generating a certain level of success and taking care of yourself, is there anything that stands out to you that you would share, that you would say, if I could whisper this into the ear of the woman who's standing in that bedroom and initially processing, oh, it happened, what might you whisper?
I would encourage her to feel the feelings, to pause, check in on herself, right? People check in on you, check in on yourself, and just say what's happening right now, so that you're aware of it, because otherwise everything starts to blur. And I don't know, I think I was so sad when Daddy left, right? But I think that I had to understand that my sadness had different characteristics at different times. And I had to feel when it was about anger, and I had to feel when it was about resentment, and I had to feel when it was about loneliness. In order to move through the sadness, I had to articulate the different things that I was feeling at a particular moment so that I could just sit there, recognize it.
Mm-hmm.
And then also significantly realize that at 2:00 today, I felt angry about the fact that this was a man who was so smart. He came to America with he worked for the government in Montserrat, and when he came to America, they wanted him to like stock groceries. Like what? So I had that moment in reviewing his life that there were things that he could have done, could have been, and thinking about the different ways his life was circumscribed, right? Circumscribed.
Yeah, I think that's right.
That his opportunities were narrowed, not of his own making, right? So I had that moment. And then, so that was like 2:00. And then at maybe 6:00 later in that evening, I had a memory of Daddy taught me how to drive. And so I always maintain I'm the best driver that you know. It's true. I am.
love it. I love it.
And I had to be like, oh, so thankful that Daddy taught me how to drive. I remember when I rented the car and I said, oh, I need a car that seats 8. And they gave me this whopper of a vehicle. I had never driven anything that big. And just as I was thinking that, I remembered my father saying, my daughter will know how to drive any vehicle in any weather. And I was like,
okay.
Here
we are.
So at 6:00, it was a memory that made me longed for, like I longed for him and that level of confidence that he had in me, right? What's significant about that was that at 2:00 it was one feeling, and at 6:00 it was another feeling. But these were feelings that came up and transitioned. And I think that's what that's what moved me through the grief, right? That I could recognize that this feeling of loneliness is going to pass. This feeling of thankfulness is going to pass. This feeling of anger is going to pass. Because I think that's when, child, I never even went up to Science Hill when we were at school, right? So I know nothing about no science, but I did take intro to psych. I did take psychology 101. So I'm not talking like a psychiatrist or a therapist or anything. I just know that feelings have to be recognized. And part of the value of recognizing a feeling is to know that it passes.
Yes. And
everything passes.
And yes. And I think to go in the other direction and resist, I think is one of the places where that phrase, what you resist persist. I think it's nowhere more true than with those feelings. And without taking you down through a whole story in my own life, I've specifically had to do some work like over time about a feeling that I would be like, nope, not opening the door. And so, then a whole lot of huffing and puffing and never going away. Whereas when I finally learned to open the door, it was very different in terms of my ability to allow it to happen. And as you say, pass on, transition to the next feeling, move forward.
So I would say to your friend, like, job well done. You've done a great job. Done a great job. You will grow to recognize how much you have grown in the job, grown from the job, from the task, from the mission, from the whatever you want to call it, that you should try your best to feel everything as you're going through it and pause, because there is a lot of busy work to be done, but pause in these feelings so that you're working through something, not pushing it away. And to look for all of those signs that your loved one is sending you.
My dear, tomato juice, 222, whatever it is for you. I will share that my father
bulbs going out in the kitchen when you ain't trying to change no light bulb.
Okay. But for me, it's 324. Yeah, but I do. My father's birthday is March 24th, and I see 324 at some very interesting moments. And it's the same kind of deal where I go, all right, okay. I heard you.
And I'm on the right path, right? Like I'm on the right path, or you're right here with me. I don't need to worry. I'm where I'm supposed to be. Yeah.
Yep. That. So, always big hug. Big hug. I'm a huge fan. We will be on the lookout. You want to tell folks, what books they should be on the lookout for, or what they should be downloading and looking for?
This book first.
The House of
February
Eve.
7th. It's so good. It is about two Black women in 1950s DC.
All right, The House of Eve by Sadiqa Johnson. And yes, we will be on the lookout. And thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Love. I'm glad that we got a chance to do it.
I know. We've been threatening for a while. So
I put on my good red lip for you, so you know.
I love it. Okay now.
Decides to call you and say, but is she single? Is she cute? Listen, don't hesitate.
Don't hesitate. I don't know if I can handle that kind of volume. I just have a regular old phone situation. I don't have operators standing by.
Please.
All right, my dear. We'll talk soon.
Bye.
Y'all know what time it is. It's time to walk the line. I was struck, deeply impacted, listening to Cherise's story and really thinking about the love, the care that she showed day in, day out, to have that morning routine, to lift and to clean and to cook and to care. Notice I didn't tell you to tell somebody you love them. I said show somebody you love them. For some people, it might be to do something for them. For some people, it might be to give them a gift that really shows you were thinking about them when they weren't there. For some people, maybe it's a back rub or a foot rub. Make sure you know those people before you do that. Show somebody you love them. And one way you can show this community that you love them is join the conversation at wealign.alignp.com. We're upgrading and revising some things. We're going to have the Align Circle really take off this year. You can follow us on Facebook. We have our Facebook page. We're thinking about creating a Facebook group. So do me a favor, if you would like to see a Facebook group, why don't you comment on our Facebook page? We may even try to put a poll up or something like that. But let us know that you'd like to see a Facebook group where maybe we could house some of these conversations that we're playing with over at We Align. But most of all, I want you to understand that when you're showing love, that is a cheat code to getting unstuck. We'll talk more about that some other time, but for now, you already know that we gon' get unstuck. We gon' be unstuck. We gon' live unstuck. Unstuck as fuck. Now, let's walk the line.